So thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm not used to actually speaking between main course and dessert. In fact, I'm not used to really being the cabaret at an evening meal. But this evening's already a success, because in my own mind, I'd imagine speaking to you with wine stains and gravy down my shirt front and my tie, and I managed to avoid that. Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. I barely recognized myself, so I really appreciate that. It's a great pleasure to be here, and it's been really inspiring to hear about the work of your facilities, institutes and groups. And I've reflected during the day about actually the similarities between the research environment here in Canada and in the UK, particularly as they pertain to large-scale facilities, and also the differences. So we're all operating in a rapidly changing context, as was mentioned this morning. We both share a focus on translating discoveries research into economic growth and commercial development. The issues about our own sovereignty, technological sovereignty, and etc., bear on our minds. But it's also interesting to think about the differences between the two environments, and I really feel I've learned a lot today. And I was reflecting that actually an organization like this, where you've got really high profile, highly productive research institutes, centers, etc., all together in one room, it reflects the coherence of the research community, the coherence of the various facilities. And it would be great, I think, if we could do a similar thing in the UK, because I can't imagine an environment where we've got sort of Arctic exploration and other research areas all together in one place. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And actually, on reflection, I think there is a lot we can learn in the UK from actually what you are doing through the CFI and here today. The slightly darker purple cover is what we call Bucket 2, which is focused on strategic government and societal priorities. And the focus for that funding is the UK's new modern industrial strategy, which identifies 8 areas of particular focus. And then the slightly pinkier colour is Bucket 3, as it's known, which is focused on helping innovative companies, helping companies scale and grow. And the white circle in the middle with £8.4 billion in it is the enabling and strengthening UK research and development. And that is the bucket from which the underpinning capabilities are funded. So, for example, the facilities that STFC operate are funded, the facilities and the national laboratories are funded from this bucket. And within that Bucket 2, which is focused on addressing government and society priorities, they are to be long-term strategic programs developed in consultation with DCIT, which is the Government Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, interacting liaison with universities, innovators and investors. And the idea is it deploys the full range of UK capabilities, including other government departments and other public sector research establishments. And as I say, the way this money will be deployed will be through targeting of investment, a broad portfolio, so it won't just be issue of grant opportunities, but it will be target investment in well-defined programs developed as described above. And the expectation is that it will lead to a 3-to-1 ratio of private investment to complement the public investment. At the moment, that's not a requirement, but it's more of a target for that funding. But it demonstrates the importance of private-public partnership in addressing these priority areas. And those priority areas are shown here on the block diagram, and the size of the blocks represent the size of the budget. So you can see extensive investment, and of course it is, but extensive investment in AI, life sciences, digital and technologies, engineering, biology, quantum, defence and national security is an important growing area as well in the UK. So this diagram demonstrates actually that those changes and how they're taking place. So the line on the left-hand side is where we are in this year, 25-26, our financial year ticks over at the end of March. And the way funding has been allocated up until now is in what we call a range of stack lines, which are all listed down the left-hand side. And I don't intend to go through that because the point of this diagram is to show that what is happening is a great simplification of our funding arrangement into those 4 buckets on the right-hand side, rather than a host of quite focused areas of investment on the left-hand side. And the other important transition here is we moved from inputs to outputs. You can clearly see on the left-hand side, largely those headings are about the activities and the inputs, but on the right-hand side, we're focusing on our funding strategy on what the outputs, the expected outputs of the research are to be. So that's a little bit about the funding context. It's changing, and it's only being put into place at the moment, and we will be operating under the new regime from the 1st of April. And of course, there is always a challenge associated with a change of that kind of magnitude, and that is the position we are in at the moment. So now to focus on the Science and Technology Facilities Council, which has a mission with traditional British understatement, which is discovering the secrets of the universe, developing advanced technologies and solving real-world challenges. And in order to do that, and alongside that, we have to discharge our responsibilities for frontier science. So we are responsible for the funding and supporting particle physics, astronomy, nuclear physics, and space science. We are the custodians. We operate the major UK multidisciplinary facilities, about which I'll say more shortly. And we also operate 2 research and innovation campuses, the Harwell campus and the Daresbury Science and Innovation campus. And we have the responsibility on behalf of the government and UKRI to look after UK-funded international facilities such as CERN, the Square Kilometre Array Observatory, etc. So we're strategic innovation. One of the common themes of encompassing all of those disciplines is the need for long-term planning and operations. So we have to take a strategic view of what we do. Collaboration is critically important, domestic collaboration, engaging with a very vibrant user community, but also looking to invest and collaborate internationally. Our laboratories, the national laboratories that I mentioned, have a very clear focus to solve national problems. And this is a point I'll come back to. Although the facilities are operated by STFC, the science we address is much broader. It covers the remits of just about all of the research councils. And so we're operating these large facilities for a broad research ecosystem. And critical to that, of course, is being able to develop the future talent, the future STEM workforce. And we do that at all levels, apprenticeships through supporting studentships to PhD level. So we cover a very broad disciplinary range, from critical technologies to cultural heritage, and a very broad disciplinary range. This is, I don't propose to dwell onto this slide too much longer, but it illustrates, I guess, in budgetary terms, the scale of STFC. Our budget is of the order of £1 billion a year. Around about £180 million of that is invested in grant funding. The order of £500 million is invested in operating the UK's national facilities, and £330 million supporting our international collaborations and large-scale research infrastructures. Now, set against those numbers, the £11 million at the bottom seems a pretty small number, but it's a really important investment through our campuses and innovation clusters that we operate through our customers to actually help companies scale and grow and actually see the products of the research we enable and support being commercially exploited. And part of one of the vehicles for doing that is we have a set of 7 clusters, which include space, health, digital, quantum, energy, and now defense, which actually bring researchers, users of the campus facilities, and private sector organizations together to engage in collaborative work in those areas. going to take you a quick tour around the British Isles to demonstrate where our sites are. At Harwell, we have the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory, home to our multidisciplinary facilities. Around about 2,300 STFC staff work there, but on the broader campus, there's 7,500 people and 222 20 plus businesses operating on the Harwell campus, and with a strong focus on space, energy, quantum, health tech and defense that really can exploit the convening power of the campuses to focus the outputs of research on those important areas. Moving further up the west coast, the Daresbury Laboratory is significantly smaller with an order of 700 STFC staff. The focus of the Daresbury Laboratory is providing really world-leading engineering and cryogenic capability and also e-infrastructure expertise, and also through a similar model to Harwell, supporting businesses located on the Harwell campus. So there's around about 3-to-1 ratio between STFC staff and the broader campus population, including the 160 plus businesses that relate on the campus. So heading up into Scotland, into Edinburgh, the UK Astronomy Technology Centre is the home to 130 staff and is our centre of excellence for the development of scientific instrumentation facilities for principally ground-based astronomy, but also space-based astronomy. And there's also the Peter Higgs Innovation Centre, which over the last 6 years has incubated 26 local companies. Now, the Bulby is our underground laboratory. It's only a kilometre underground rather than 2 kilometres underground. It's quite a bit smaller. It also is our underground laboratory housed in an operating mine. It's currently a polyhalide mine and provides that underground multidisciplinary science space has some of the characteristics that you heard about and you'll be well aware of that Snow Lab has, but it provides the UK with sovereign underground capability. The Chilbolton Observatory, very small site, really focused on meteorological measurements and a satellite tracking capability, working with organisations such as the Met Office, but also with an interest in space weather. And then moving a little bit further north is the head office in Polaris House, which I won't talk about in great detail. But I just wanted to go back to the Harwell campus and just spend a few moments talking about our facilities in a little bit more detail, because I think this is useful context to what follows. So this is the view across the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory with the diamond light source in the foreground. The diamond light source is a third generation synchrotron light source, so providing those high intense light beams for a very broad range of material science experiments, and is currently undergoing a major upgrade to a fourth generation light source, which will result in a 70-fold increase in intensity. Diamond light source was built around about 20 years ago. It was the largest, it is the largest scientific facility to be built in the UK over the last 40 years. It's an interesting model because it's a private company. STFC, my organisation, is the 86% shareholder, with the Wellcome Trust holding the balance of the shares. So it's a private company, it's a joint venture. And it has a community of around about 14,000 interested researchers, 750 staff, and the Diamond 2 project is also employing around about 140 staff at the moment. The scientific program is approximately 50-50 split between the life and the physical sciences, but there's also a strong industrial program, particularly around looking at pharmaceuticals studying the structure of pharmaceutical molecules. So this is a quick schematic of the diamond light source. I won't go through in great detail, but its beams, as you can see, provide about 10,000 the brightness of the sun, and focus down to look in detail at the structures of materials, and that allows us to operate a suite of around about 35 different instruments, all with slightly unique parameters to address different aspects of material science. So the scientific range is demonstrated at the bottom from macular molecular crystallography through imaging of engineering components, soft condensed matter, and also biological cryogening, spectroscopy, etc. Moving off to one side, we have RAL Space, which has over 50 years of heritage, delivering over 210 space missions. It is the UK's national laboratory for space. And next door, we have recently constructed and now operating the UK's sovereign facility for testing satellites. And you can see the size of the test chambers in the middle of this picture. We have a range of test chambers. This is the largest. And this recreates the environment of both launch and actually operational environments in space, with the exception of gravity, of course. And to ensure, working with private sector and public sector companies, that satellites are launched with having been very thoroughly tested, which is a critical capability. Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. So this is a picture closer to the back of the site, and we'll just have a quick tour around. The National Quantum Computing Centre has now been operational on the site for around about 4 years, and provides the UK's national laboratory for quantum computing, both developing technology in partnership with a broad range of organisations, but also engaging industry and recognising the opportunities that accrue from developing quantum technologies, and actually involved in skills development. The ICIS pulse neutron and muon source has been operating now for 40 years, which is a long time for a neutron source, but continues actually to be amongst the top 2 most scientifically productive neutron sources in the world. In any given year, either the Institut Langevin in Grenoble, France, or the ICIS pulse neutron source are the most scientific productive. It is currently undergoing a major development, which includes the installation of 8 new or upgraded instruments. So in any typical year, it's a proton-driven spallation source. So a large particle accelerator produces very high energy protons that chip neutrons off two heavy metal targets, and that allows us to support a suite of neutron instruments. So in a typical year, we'll have around about 3,000 research visits, undertaking 1,200 experiments. They tend to come from, on average, 30 countries, producing 600 publications. And one of the KPIs that's not shown here, we also have around about 100 companies a year coming and using our capabilities. So the whole source is driven by an 800 megavolt proton synchrotron, which fires, as I say, a high-energy beam of protons down to a heavy metal target, and the instruments surround the target, which is the circle towards the left-hand side of this picture. And just like with the diamond light source, those instruments have different configurations. None of them are identical. They cover a very broad disciplinary range. So in any given day on the ICIS source, you could have on one instrument somebody studying the internal structure of an ammonite that's 7.5 million years old, or the latest battery material on another instrument, or looking at membrane dynamics on another instrument. A very multidisciplinary facility. And it covers, as I said, this addresses some of the disciplines that are covered. And our science strategy now is really about focusing on important application areas: energy clean growth, life science and healthcare, advanced manufacturing materials, and quantum science and materials. Towards the back of the site is the Extreme Photon Application Center. It's not yet operating, but this is a 1 petawatt laser which will operate at the order of 10 hertz for a wide range of applications, including imaging, wake field acceleration, and also non-equilibrium physics. This is an investment between UKRI and the Ministry of Defence, and will provide really new opportunities around laser-based accelerators and particle sources. And also, staying within the central laser facility, there's the development of a new high-power laser, Vulcan 2020, which will be a 20 petawatt laser, which will come online round about 2033, which, although it won't have the frequency of the EPAC, Engineering Photonics Acceleration Center, will be at that point, all being well, the world's most powerful laser. And the Central Laser Facility also supports a laser for science facility, lower power lasers, but offering unique capabilities in spectroscopy and imaging. So that's a quick whiz through our major facilities. I'm now going to say a little bit about our international connections. And as I said, STFC has the responsibility for looking after the UK's major international partnerships, so CERN, the Square Kilometre Array Observatory in Australia and Africa, the European Southern Observatory in Chile, and the European Spallation Neutron Source, which is currently being built in Lund in Sweden. And so just to plot some of those on the map, you can see there were some of those that I missed off the previous list, including FAIR and the European X-ray free electron laser. I'll come back to why the international facilities are important to us in a moment. Integrated portfolio management was a specific question I was asked to address, and I reflected on how best to present this. And I think, as an organisation, a good starting point was to be actually to determine the principles that form our view about how we manage the breadth of our facilities portfolio. So the STFC facilities, as I've already mentioned, do not just provide facilities to deal with STFC science, but we provide that broad underpinning capability to the full breadth of the UK research and innovation ecosystem. And what we think is critically important is the complementary of all our facilities. We're in the fortunate position where the facilities like the neutron source, synchrotron source, the laser facility, and other capabilities, including our compute facilities, are all located, or predominantly located, on one site, the Harwell campus. And we can, and we should, do more, and we do, exploit the complementarity of those capabilities. But the way I try and sum this up is that we need to move from a position where we're offering neutrons and photons to one where we're offering our partners solutions by the best combination of neutrons and photons and other probes. So that complementarity between our facilities is a great asset. Thinking particularly in this case about engaging in the operation of international facilities, but it applies to some extent nationally as well, is the benefits of operating these facilities extend well beyond research and collaboration. And that's a point I'll come back to. And I mentioned this point about co-location reaping rewards. So we've got what I think is a very impressive suite of capability in our facilities. The way we provide access predominantly is free at the point of access for academic users. So that is great because it provides a low friction access to facilities, and that promotes agility. It means we can be responsive to emerging scientific trends. We can engage very effectively in collaboration and innovation. And it is important because it means our scientific program is driven by demand, it's driven by our users. Just want to remind you about what I said earlier. We're providing that facilities across the broad range of research councils. And one of the challenges of providing free at point of access is the age-old challenge that actually if you're not charging somebody for something, then they don't see the value in it. And we see that at the moment as we are discussing the current funding challenges, is while colleagues who are funded from all of the research councils can recognize that, understand that the people they are funding are using our facilities, there is less of a sense of ownership. And actually one of my takeaways today is I really get the sense that the facilities are broadly regarded as a national asset. And I think that's one of the weaknesses that we are experiencing at the moment. Industry access is an interesting point. If a university is collaborating with a company and the academics apply for the beam time, then they will get the time on the facility free of charge. It's free at the point of access. We have reflected long and hard about the extent to which we should be recovering costs for this activity, but actually, and we may well move down in that direction, but of course, the benefit of the company working with the university is often felt in terms of studentships, supporting the research in the university, and were we to take a firm position as a facility, then there's a risk that would endanger those kind of relationships. However, if a company wants to use the facility, wants to keep their, not share the outputs of the research, there's an expectation anybody using the facilities will publish, then we do have an approach to cost recovery. They are charged for using the facility, but we have a range of flexible access routes. So, for example, we have a collaborative research and development route. So if a company has not used a particular probe before, they come and do the experiment, they analyze the data. If they want to have the data in the public domain, it's published and they are not charged. But if they want to hang on to the data, then retrospectively, they will be charged for the beam time. Some of our facilities, ISIS is a good example, have, although they are domestic facilities, they have strong international partnerships. So over 40 years of operation, Italy has been a very strong partner throughout the history of ISIS, India, Sweden, the Netherlands, India, Sweden, the Netherlands, my mind's gone blank, but we have a number of academic partnerships. So around about 10% of beam time at ISIS is supported by international partnerships. And that means those countries have access to all of the instruments on the source, but it has also proved to be really effective in building strong collaborations, both scientific collaborations and technical collaborations. And indeed, some of our more innovative instruments on the facilities have arisen through these international partnerships when there's been direct investment in the facilities. And then to come back to a point that I was that sort of skirted around earlier, one of the benefits of the international collaboration, both companies coming and investing in our facilities, but also the UK investment in other international facilities, is the industrial gains that accrue from the work. So this is an example of CERN, but by really focusing on a targeted and business-centric approach to how we engage with CERN, we've managed to double the value of contracts coming to the UK from CERN to the UK by really engaging very proactively via our industrial liaison team. And examples of doing that include developing innovative alliances, developing university partnerships, new international collaborations. And amongst the benefits of this kind of way of operation, of course, is we end up upskilling UK companies. We support UK companies developing those cutting-edge technical skills, as well as reaping the financial benefits of such opportunities. And they have a benefit across a broad range of markets. And a nice example was the European Spallation Source, which is currently under construction in Lund. They are Accelerator Science and Technology Department, which is based in Daresbury, and Technology Department provided a lot of the superconducting cavities for the accelerator project, which was costed around about £30 million. And that actually allowed us, it was our in-kind contribution to the facility, but has also allowed us to develop real world-leading expertise in this area. I've touched on this a little bit already, but it's the advantages of co-location. Of course, the UK, being geographically a smaller country, has an advantage in this sense, that we can exploit the co-location of our facilities. And we've seen a rapid development of the Harwell campus that was really formally started around about 25 years ago, and then it's grown very rapidly, really building on the scientific quality of the facilities on the campus, exploiting those, engaging companies around those capabilities, but also taking on tenants who want to come and use our facilities, and see that as an important part of their growth and development as a company. The campus is actually a joint venture, public-private sector joint venture between STFC, Brookfield and the UK Atomic Energy Authority, who collectively run and support the campus. And we see this growing, so the campus now is actually the UK's biggest space cluster, real focus for space. And as a consequence, we're attracting a considerable investment. Some of these figures you've already seen before, but the levels of investment now approaching $1.5 billion in the organisations that have relocated to Harwell. And this map of Harwell gives you an indication that might be the case. You can see some of the organisations I've already mentioned. At the bottom, you can see the STFC facilities, Diamond, ISIS, the laser facilities. I would also add in the European Space Agency is situated on the campus. The Faraday Institution, which is the UK's research centre for battery materials, which is funded directly by a government department. The Medical Research Council has the Mary Lyons Centre on the campus. There's a biomedical research activity, the Nucleic Acid and Therapy Accelerator. And what I think this reflects is, of course, that the campus is attracting major research institutes together. It's developing incredible convening power and increasingly coming to a place where people are drawn to use a variety of probes, a variety of facilities, to engage in collaborations to solve some of the most important problems. So we describe it as a unique environment based on co-location, and a nice example is the impact it's had on space, where we started off with RAL Space, now have the National Satellite Test Facility. The cluster is developed, and now the space alone, we're employing around about 1,400 people on the campus, contributing of order £507 billion to UK GDP. Similarly, we have a similar arrangement at Daresbury. I won't go through this in detail, but one of the success indicators of the Daresbury campus is we have about a tenth of the failure rate of emerging companies on the campus than anywhere else in the UK. We're now talking about our approach to strategic planning and priority setting. And as I mentioned, the way we are funded is changing. I think the way the environment in which we're all operating is changing. And we are seeing increased focus on government and societal priorities. Sorry, this is me getting a bit too carried away with the clip art and actually having literal buckets. And I'm afraid I can't look at this picture without thinking about drips coming through the roof, which is entirely the wrong metaphor for me to be focusing on. But I think this is the reality of our funding position, is that we have to develop our strategy that actually works within, it allows us to be successful in this new four-bucket environment. And we're also seeing a change in the user communities. For many of our facilities, we would have people who are professional X-ray users, what I would call professional X-ray users, or professional neutron users, or professional laser experts, etc. And they would come with a very focused idea of the kind of experiments they want to do. Increasingly, our probes are one of a number of probes a particular researcher would use to solve a problem. And so we have to respond and deal with a multidisciplinary user community who tend to be less expert in the techniques that we are providing. We've also got the changing international research landscape that we have to respond to. I think, that if you forgive me, and as an aside, one of my reflections on some of the discussion during the day, of course, in the UK, we're as concerned about technical and research sovereignty as I understand you are here in Canada. And actually, that's an environment in which we should be looking to collaborate more rather than less with trusted partners to ensure that we can have a vibrant and successful research base. So that's the environment we're operating in. And on this slide, I just wanted to compare how we have operated until this point to the new focus about how we're going to have to operate in the future, or want to operate in the future. So typically, we have operated our facilities in a way that's very much responsive to user programs. People would come to us with proposals given that they satisfy quality and timeliness criteria, etc., they would have time on the facilities and we would support that activity. The majority of our users are from academia. I imagine that's going to be the case for some years to come, but we are seeing an increase in interest in using our facilities from a wide range of other public sector research bodies and private sector bodies. And up until this point, we have relied on what we refer to as core funding, funding that comes from the government via UKRI to keep our facilities running on a year-to-year basis. As we move forward, we're going to need to be more proactive about setting areas of focus that align to those government priorities. That needs to be a very deliberate and supported action. So one of the ideas we're developing at the moment is working title gateways, where we're actually working with a broad range of bodies, companies, universities, so we can exploit the convening power of our facilities and campus to identify really pressing research questions, engage the right collaboration, set a long-term strategy to addressing them, and then put those into process and into action. And that will have to change the way we start to look at how we allocate beam time. If we're doing that, we need to operate a more programmatic approach where we're very deliberate in providing focus around those priority areas. As we do that, we'll expect that broader range of users I will refer to, and we will also have to address a broader range of funding sources. We have to reduce our dependency on direct funding via UKRI and look to be working through other partners to deliver that focused research. And behind that is the need for long-term strategic partnerships. We have got some really great examples of long-term strategic partnerships with private companies, for example, but they tend to be few and far between. We need to, in those focus areas, to actually be working with those companies who have a long-term view about how our research facilities can support their programs, and also the university groups where we know that we can develop the most impactful research. And of course, behind that is the need for longer-term planning. I was very impressed during the day to hear about 15-year plans, etc. The National Quantum Computing Centre has a 10-year funding horizon. The rest of us, the spending review is 4 years, but we don't have certainty actually through that period. Longer-term planning like that is something we certainly aspire to, and really underpins the impactfulness of the facilities to be able to think and plan in a much longer term way. And also to take a more portfolio approach. I've already touched on this at the moment. We have tended as an organisation to be quite federated. A loose connection of feuding warlords was the way somebody described the organisation to me when we first arrived. And we now, I think we moved a long way from that. But it comes back to my point about saying that we no longer should just say we offer photons, neutrons, and other probes, but we offer solutions to the important problems we're faced with. The governance framework, I think I know a little bit more what's behind the question, having listened to the discussion today. So forgive me if I'm not quite met the brief here. But I thought what you might find interesting is how the organisation is structured. So on the right-hand side, there's the formal executive structure, if you like. We have a council, which is chaired by Michelle Doherty, our executive chair, and then an executive board. And then the organisation essentially divides into two now: the Programmes Directorate, which looks after and funds the international facilities, but also the particle physics, astronomy, and nuclear physics programme, and then the National Laboratories, which is essentially the labs that I've been describing. And within the National Laboratories, we look after the domestic facilities, the multidisciplinary facilities, and each of those facilities has a facility advisory body, external facility advisory body drawn internationally, and for the larger facilities, they will have an advisory body that provides advice on the operations of the facility, and another science advisory committee that obviously provides that very focused scientific advice. And beam time is allocated through facility access panels that meet every 6 months to review all the proposals to the beam line. That's their primary task, but they're also, of course, a really good source of advice for the future development of the facility. And then on the strictly speaking governance side, I don't know why that disappeared. We have the Science Board, which is our principal advisory board. We've now divided Science Board into two, one focused on the facility laboratories, one focused on the particle physics and astronomy and nuclear program. And they are actually also advised by specific advisory panels in disciplinary areas, and they provide their advice directly onto the STFC Executive Board. I think one of my reflections, having listened to the discussion today, is actually the link into the broader UKRI portfolio is clearly from this diagram not strong, and I think that actually is reflected in reality. Although the other research councils are represented on some of these boards, that sense of ownership is not necessarily reflected in the government structures. We have over recent years made very significant investment in infrastructure projects, and they typically originate within the council, so STFC, the proposals for EPAC and the Vulcan 2020, all originated within the councils, often working collaboratively with university groups. But they are prioritised at UKRI level, so the STFC does not award large-scale capital grants of that scale, and the process for doing that is through an infrastructure committee, which is informed by a number of advisory bodies, including the delightfully named FSAG, which is the Facility Strategic Advisory Group. And all of those groups will have quite formal gateway processes as they go through the submission of the proposal, the awarding of the funding, and even once funding is operated as we go through the delivery of the project. International facilities are an interesting challenge. I suspect I'm not saying anything that you're not aware of, but of course in many cases these are treaty obligations and so forth. So our governance of those facilities is conducted very much jointly with the relevant government departments. In our case, it was Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. And typically, the UK will be represented on the councils by somebody from STFC and also somebody from the government department. So I'm getting close to the end. It looks like you haven't actually, I don't know if you've had your dessert, so apologies if I've stood between you and your dessert, but I wanted to finish with say with gratitude, and a success story, the collaboration between the UK and Canada around access to the ISIS neutron muon source has been a really positive story over the last few years. This is a partnership that I think was initiated in around about 2021, and at this stage it's a pilot project based on the MOU on the left-hand side. But the consequence of that is well, let me tell you about the inputs first. So following workshops, etc., a dedicated panel, which was a Canadian staff panel, reviewed proposals for ISIS. That resulted in 30 experiments on ISIS and 52 researcher visits, 41 unique researchers from 13 Canadian institutions. 26 of those visitors were students at either PhD or master's level. And actually, the majority of the principal investigators were, my understanding is, new to the probe. So that demonstrates strong demand. And really, the breadth of science was very impressive. It spans from the top right-hand corner from dinosaur bones to battery cells and mitochondria to membranes. So a very broad range of disciplines being supported through that route. So really pleased that we've got that strong evidence of collaboration. So I'm going to finish there. I have no idea how long I've taken, so apologies if I've been too quick or too fast, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Roger. Are you okay for a couple questions? There's a couple of questions. Happy, yeah. So are there any questions in the room to ask Rogers? I mean, maybe I can start the ball with, I I noticed that in at least two of your facilities that you're encouraging incubation of companies. How prominent is the Innovate UK portfolio within your facilities? I mean, are they? I mean, I didn't see any of their logos anywhere. So are they omnipresent in your facility?
No, that we have worked in actually quite effective partnership with Innovate UK. So, for example, there was a funding call for particularly based around biotechnology, which was actually administered by Innovate UK in combination with the Biotechnology and Biotechnology Support Centre. And that actually supported companies to come and do experiments on our facilities. And that, I mean, it was a relatively small amount of money, but it actually started the ball rolling with those companies, because there's quite a potential barrier often for industrial use, because companies doubt whether they can really realize the benefits. So actually encouraging the first one or two experiments and supporting that has been really useful. And the development within Innovate UK is actually getting stronger as we move into this new position where there's that deliberate choicefulness about helping companies scale.
Yeah, we have a question here.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just one simple or a huge question. The co-location, so the idea of centralizing more facilities in one spot, how was this decision made? I mean, obviously it's a huge, complicated decision, but the flip cost is that it means all the other places don't have, you know, infrastructure or of the same type. So why centralization and why this location? And who took that decision and what was the response?
Okay. Well, I mean, it evolved over time, and actually we've not relocated facilities to be there. When there's been opportunity to build a new facility, then that has been built at the Harwell campus. So the most obvious example is the Diamond facility. Its predecessor was at the Daresbury Laboratory in the Northwest. And then as Diamond was funded, then for a wide range of factors, the decision was taken to relocate it to the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory, to the Harwell campus. And the other facilities that were there have sort of evolved over time because of the scale of the campus and the fact that the infrastructure that starts to attract other facilities, and it becomes the obvious place to locate them. So, for example, the Rutherford Lab housed a lot of the detector development, the technology development for the particle physics and nuclear physics program. One of the reasons ISIS was so successful as a neutron source, it didn't have to reinvent all of that because it was there on the site. And that applies equally to the other departments. So to some extent, you don't necessarily have to be deliberate about co-location. It turns out it's the best place to do it. And of course, the UK has some advantages of being geographically small, is that you don't have to, you know, one of our biggest users is the University of Manchester, which is in the northwest, because actually that's a reasonable commute. Sorry, this is a rather longer answer than you were expecting, I guess, but well, it's a combination of the two. It's sort of evolved, and now it's recognized as a real asset that we really want to get behind.
Thank you for the question. One final question. So please join me in thanking our speaker again for a wonderful talk.